Welcome to BPPD. My name is Jorge Ortiz. During last episode, we were talking about how to evolve code, how to add tests in an existing code base, and how to make this code testable, something that you can trust. So whenever you do a change, you know that it doesn't affect the already existing code. In this session, I'm going to continue from the last situation in our project, and what we are going to do is to test every other path in that method. Okay, so what we are going to do here is continue testing the list function that we created. Let me remind you that in the previous episode, what we were doing was to extract the list function so we could test this separately from the Cobra command object that was used in order to have the list subcommand of our application. Okay, so here you have on the left here the list function that we extracted, and on the right we have the test and the auxiliary method, the auxiliary function, sorry, that we created in the last episode. What we're going to do now is to add a second test. That second test is going to go to the other case in the happy path. So if you read the code on the left, you will see that the test that we were doing the other day was involving this part of the code here. So if there are no tasks, I will print this message and I will exit the function. Now, what we're going to test is if we do have some task, then we are going to have this, you have the following task message, followed by the name of the task and a number. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, pretty easily. We are going to come to the test file. Let me remind you that that was list underscore test go. And what we are going to have here is another test function. So I'm going to create this test function and I'm going to call it test list with tasks prints message and tasks. Fair enough. So I'm going to repeat the same path that I followed in the previous video. So I will have an arrange section for the test, an act, and an assert. And I'm going to build them exactly as I did in the previous video. So what I would like to test is the cmd dot list, and here I'm going to have a function that is the one that will provide me the data that I want. Let me declare this one here. So I create this function and I use colon equals to define this as a new variable, and this is going to be a function that takes no parameters and returns a slice of db tasks and an error. Okay, this function in this case is going to return whatever I want, which for this case, when it does have some task, I expect it to return at least one task. So let's do that. Let's return db task, an array. Oh, sorry about that. An array of db task that is going to be a db task and nil for the error. Okay, but this DB task I wanted to have some information. So if you see, probably is not as readable because of the smaller font of the LSP here, the language server protocol. But you have a DB task shown up there in this small square saying that it has a key field and a value field. So these are the ones that I'm going to use. So I have a key, and the key is an integer, so I will make it any integer. So 256, for example, and then the value, which is going to be write a report. So I have created a task that it has a key number of 256 and the text write a report, which is what I'm expecting to do for this task. Okay, so now I'm passing this function into the list function. So that is my dependency injection, as we mentioned on the previous video. And I would like to capture the output of this function. So in order to do that, I'm going to say message colon equals capture output, and I'm going to have a function here, an anonymous one, that is going to use this list function that I was using, and this is going to be used by the capture output to grab whatever is written to the standard output. Okay, so then what I would like to have is a comparison here, but in order to know what is the expected output, I'm going to define it first. So I go to the range part, and here I create a constant which is going to be called exp msg for expected message, and this is going to be the text that I expect this function to return. So let me go to the other side of the editor. Let me copy this so I don't make any typos, and here I'm going to have you have the following tasks, which is going to be followed by a new line because it is in a println, and then I will have the number for the position in the slice, not the key, but the position in the slice, which is going to be 0 because there's only one item and this item has number 0. So this is going to be 0 plus 1, and the plus 1 comes from this part of the code here. And what I'm going to do here is to have a 1 dot space write a report. That's it. That's what I'm expecting to get as a result when I invoke this method with this database contents. So if message is not equal to expected message, what I'm going to do is to have an error printed, which is going to say wrong output, and is going to have an expected, let's put a tab here, expected and an actual comma t, an actual value with this one. Okay, so this is a string for the error, and it's going to have the expected message and the actual message. And I will close the scope for the error here. So unless I have made any errors, that should be it. I arrange the things, I define what I'm expecting to see, I define the dependency injection that is going to provide me with the expected list of tasks, which is going to be just one with a key number, any number, and with a text that I know of. And then I will invoke the method, I will capture the output, and I will compare the output that has been obtained from the capture with the expected one. If they match, everything is fine. If they don't, then I will complain and the error that the test won't pass. Okay, so let's make this happen. And I'm now running the test, and well, it says that I'm having some error here, and the problem is that if we go to the code here, is also printing a new line after the write a report, which I didn't include in the message. So let's solve that, and hopefully now it will pass. So let's make this happen, and yeah, perfect. So now we have the second happy path test. But what happens with the sad path? Should we test for the things when things fail? Obviously, we should also test everything in the function, including, and particularly interesting, when things fail. So let's go and write a second test, in this case a third, because we have the first one that we wrote in the previous episode, that is going to have this other path, the sad path, tested. So in this case, let me show you here. I'm going to test this part of the code. If there is an error, I want this message to be printed with the error string, and I want it to exit. We will see that exit is going to cause some problems, and we will solve them immediately. But let's start with writing the test, and then we will see what happens. So let me go back to the code here, and I'm going to copy the first test, the test that we wrote the other day, because it's closer to the one that I'm writing now, and I'm going to introduce this new test here. So I'm going to say test, and the name of the test is going to be list error prints message. Okay, and what I'm going to have here is I'm copying what I did the other day, and let me center this here. So the test list error prints message is going to hopefully return an error message. Which error message? Well, the one that I have here in this part of the code. So let me copy it here. Let me copy it from here. So I start with something went wrong. And since this is a comma separated list in a println, it will have a space between the string test, the error string, and this test that I have passed onto the function. So let me copy this here. Let's go to the other place, and the expected message is going to be something went wrong, space, and whatever I put in the error that I return. In this case, I'm going to write some error just to make it simple. The list, the function that is returning the contents of the database, is not going to return a slice, not even an empty one, but nil for the slice of DB tasks. And here I'm going to provide errors new some error. Okay, so now this function is going to is acting as a stub, as in the previous cases, and instead of providing me with a list of DB tasks, is going to provide me with an error. Exactly what I want to test. The act part is exactly the same. I'm going to invoke the list method with this dependency injection, and I expect it to be called inside of this capture output because I want to obtain the information that is printed to the standard output. And finally here, what I want to verify is that the message is exactly the same as I was getting. So this seems to be written, and let's write the test. Let's run the test, and let's see what happens. Well, as you see, it complains. It says that it exited normally, but it doesn't give me any information about why. So let's run this again. But in this case, you can see this in the last line of the editor, because this is what I'm telling which command, where I'm telling it which command I want it to run. And here I introduce a slash, no, not a slash, a dash v to say, let me know what happens for each of the tests. So I press enter, and now it's giving me a little bit more of detail for each of the tests that it runs. And it says it's running this test and it passes this test. But notice that in the last one, and let me go here. So for the first one, runs and pass. For the second one, it runs and pass. While for the third one, it runs, but nothing happens. It doesn't pass. And why is that? Well, the reason why this happens is because of this culprit here, which is the exit call. Having an exit in a function is not a very good idea. Why? Well, it's very similar to when you have employees and you ask them to do things, and if they find any problem, if they cannot fulfill the task, they just stop and don't tell you anything. This is not what you want. You want them to report to you to say, hey, I couldn't do this because of that reason. Exactly the same when I run this method, when I run this function, in this case, the list function. If anything goes wrong, I want it to tell me that it went wrong, and then I would like to be able to bubble up this error to the user interface, or at least act on it if there's something else I can do. So what I'm going to do here is to refactor the code as we did the other day. So in this case, I'm going to change the list function that is returning nothing in this moment to return an error. And when I have this, I can do here, I can make it capture the error, and if something goes wrong, then I will exit, but not inside of the function, but at the higher level in the command. So I'm going to exit 1, and here, instead of exiting, I'm going to return the error that has happened. So this is behaving exactly the same as before, but I have bubbled up the error message to the higher level, and from there I'm going to act on it. I'm going to exit. In order to make this function run properly, I cannot just return here, because it's that what I have said in the definition of the function is that it returns, the signature says that it returns an error. And if I have no error, I can have to say that I return nil. Same thing happens here. So let me copy it here, and that should be it. Now that I have that, I can run the test again, and hopefully, well, now it's running till the end, and it's saying that something went wrong because there is some problem with the message here. Let's try to solve that one. Probably there's a command n, sorry, a slash n that is not there, a backslash n. So let's see it. Let's get out of here, and let's see what it should be happening. So we're saying that some error, yeah, we need a new line here. Let's run it again, and wow, now it passes. Okay, hopefully you will be able to see that it is important to test every path in our function, not only the happy paths, but also the sad paths too, the paths in which some error happens, and I want to know how to act on that error. And You can refactor as we did the other day. Here, what I have done is to bubble up the message, the error message, to the higher level, the function, in this case, the command that was running that function, the list function. Uh, in general, it's a very good advice to avoid having an exit from a function in the middle of your code. You don't want that because you want to be able to act on errors and not to lose total control of your application just by calling a method and you don't expect it to get out of the program. So, uh, I hope that this has been useful. This is the end of the second episode. In the next one, I'm planning to convert these tests into table tests. I hope that's interesting. I still hope that if you think that this is useful to you, you click on the like button, and if you make any suggestions on other topics or related topics that I can cover here, I would really appreciate it. In any case, thank you and take care. See you around soon.